am one of the most notorious slashers in history, and I don't want to give that up. I am Chucky, the killer dog, and I dig it!
Hey everybody, it's me, Derek D.C. Phillips, bringing you all things frightful. Fresh off the heels of Chucky Season 2, I have a few thoughts to get off my chest, and there's no time like the present to discuss this alternately beloved and reviled franchise with you all, so let's get started. As I'm sure many or most of you know, Don Mancini is the single cohesive thread throughout the franchise in terms of the creative team behind the movies. Now, he wouldn't gain full control until later sequels, which we'll get to, but even in the first Child's Play movie, we see his touch. However, the first film is more of a slow burn in its Jaws-like approach. You can tell that Chucky is shown with restraint. There's a lot of cat and mouse going on in the very first movie, and that works. We spend a good chunk of this one getting to know the characters, getting to know Andy, and so much of the mythology here is set up for us. As fans have learned, the voodoo origins of Chucky, of Charles Lee Ray possessing the body of the good guy doll, was sort of up for debate as the first movie was being made. But I think ultimately the voodoo angle works, and throughout the sequels, it allows for the mythology to grow. This is not just a doll or a toy that's gone haywire and is hacking people to bits. It's a bit more reserved, it's a bit more subtle. However, by the time we get to the final act, this is where we see Don Mancini's touch, if I'm not mistaken. This is where things go a bit off the rails. Chucky is indestructible. Chucky's secret is out as to his true identity and what he's trying to do, so all bets are off. And I will say, this is where Chucky was established as one of those potential upper echelon slasher icons out the gate. This is where he could really have potential to compete with the likes of Jason, of Michael, of Freddy Krueger. Although it is a bit at odds with some of the earlier tension that's developed. This is more in your face. Again, all bets are off. When we get to Child's Play 2 and 3, this is where many fans like myself have the most fun.
You've been very naughty, Miss Kendall.
Anytime I put together sort of a countdown list to Halloween, Child's Play 2 and or 3 make the cut, full pun intended. Like so many of the slasher sequels, they seem to go hand in hand. Like so many of the other major franchise slashers, Child's Play 2 and 3 for me just go together. They follow a single narrative thread. Think Halloween 4 and 5. Think Friday the 13th. Well, pretty much all of them. You know, they pretty much flow from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. So we're still following that sort of formula, and we're still getting to know the key players and making that emotional connection with them, and that's why they just seem to work. And fans love the characterization so much of Andy and Kyle in Child's Play 2 that the first season of the Chucky TV show, which again we'll get to later, be patient please, they're brought back, fan favorites, and we want to know what they're up to. They just had such a bond at that point in time, especially with Andy as a child character. It's again similar to that Halloween 4 and 5 feel. We wanted to know what was going on with Jamie Lloyd. We really cared, right? Now, although the actors may change, Andy's grown up by the time we get into Child's Play 3, and Justin Whalen is now taking over the reins. It feels like a very natural transition. This feels like the same character growing up, coming of age, as Part 3 is set a few years later. I know I'm jumping around a bit, so please bear with me. Let's talk back to Child's Play 2. Rewind a bit. I just think that this movie is such a great introduction to horror for some. You know, when you talk to horror fans. They say that Child's Play was almost a gateway slasher for them because, yeah, Chucky has a foul mouth. There are some gory scenes, but ultimately, if your parents are not super strict, they'll probably let you go ahead and check out Chucky, for better or for worse. Child's Play 2 has some great character actors in the background. It has some great over-the-top kills, while still being genuinely thrilling. There's tension that builds. This is where I feel Chucky is at his most terrifying, I would say, his most threatening and menacing, because all of the groundwork was laid in that first Child's Play movie. Now we know the rules, and we get to watch Chucky just do his thing. That showdown in the toy factory, genius. On a similar note, by the time we get to Child's Play 3, there are some great kills that are set up. That military school backdrop with other kids who are coming into contact with Chucky, and no one believes them when they say that Chucky's doing horrible things and behind some really heinous kills. I think it's just genius. This is where, again, you can see that Don Mancini touch in the background with the creativity of the kills. They keep us guessing. We know things that the characters in the movie don't, like when the paintball pellets are switched out in part 3. The tension. Now, fast forward a few years, there was a little gap between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, and we're going to tackle Bride and Seed together because, again, just like Child's Play 2 and 3 go together, Bride and Seed very much flow from one into the next. Not so effectively as Child's Play 2 and 3 did. Because by now, Don Mancini has taken over full creative control. So when we get into Bride of Chucky, we see some rules being broken. It's a little more meta thanks to the Scream movies and the popularity of that franchise having just come out. We definitely see more humor, but it works because Bride of Chucky is just so creative. By now, we've had 3 movies of Chucky doing his thing, whether it's in a suburban home, whether it's in a toy factory, whether it's in a military school. Instead of shifting the location, we kind of break the rules or bend the rules a bit. So obviously, Tiffany is a great addition here. The comedy works, and again, most importantly, there is still tension. It's not all laughs. Yes, Chucky is a wise guy, which I feel works better for Chucky than, say, a Freddy, because Chucky was this Jersey guy who happened to be a serial killer, right? The Lakeshore Strangler. So when he gets in his one-liners, if he's foul-mouthed, he's a little vulgar, it makes sense. However, by the time we get into Seed of Chucky, this is where Don Mancini's creative control allowed him to take things in an even funnier, even more slapstick direction.
Oops, I did it again.
Don't get me wrong, potty humor, as it's called, has its place. But in a Chucky movie, by the time we get to Seed, it was a little too meta. We've added on another layer of Jennifer Tilly playing Tiffany, playing Jennifer Tilly. It's all too convoluted. And again, the mythology starts to bend beyond recognition. So with Tiffany, I don't know. The addition of a child in a doll body, it's all just so silly, and I say campy. This to me just goes a little beyond campy at times. For me, Seed of Chucky is equivalent to a Jason Goes to Hell. You know, it's one that I believe I've seen once, and I have no desire to revisit it, to see it again. So I was kind of happy when others expressed very similar sentiments toward Seed of Chucky, and things would officially be going in a different direction. And I will say, this is where, again, a pattern that we start to see as Don Mancini takes over full creative control is that in the first attempt, where he has to kind of abide by some of the previously established rules, He does a great job. It might be a little different, but that works this late in a franchise. However, when he's allowed a little more time, an additional installment, that's where he goes off the rails. Because I think he's amused to do so. So I've seen others with similar thoughts and opinions, and that yes, it's Chucky. Yes, the idea of a killer doll is a bit absurd. It is over the top by nature. However, if you establish certain rules, you need to abide by them to give some kind of logical consistency. Now, because Seed of Chucky was so not well received, we'll just leave it at that. There was again another period of time where the franchise lay dormant, and the next installment would come out on video on demand. Now, a lot of people were skeptical, especially after the bomb that was Seed of Chucky. But I'll tell you, I went into Curse of Chucky with an open mind, and I loved it. It went back to that dark, gritty uncertainty that lurks around every corner. Chucky could be hiding in a cabinet. Chucky could bite off your finger if you get too close. And let me just say that one scene in Curse of Chucky where he poisons the soup at the dinner party, but you don't know who's going to get that bowl. Again, genius. In this movie, we're also introduced to Nika. So many good things came out of Curse of Chucky. For me, it's up there with 2 and 3. It is a true return to form. But again, in true Don Mancini fashion, he took it a little too far with Cult of Chucky.
Sometimes I scam myself.
He gets us hooked. He reels us in. We want to know what happens with Nika next. And then Cult of Chucky is where the idea of multiple Chucky dolls comes into play. This is where we start to get the hint that Chucky is essentially Voldemort, right? He's got these Horcruxes, which are other good guy doll bodies stashed around. I didn't hate Cult of Chucky. There were some highlights, but again, anytime Don Mancini has a second chance, he just takes it a little too far. It's great that he's having fun with it, but it's not exactly in line with what fans want from a traditional Chucky movie. Now, paths diverge dramatically between the reboot of Child's Play and the USA Sci-Fi show. I'm just going to put this out there. If the reboot had been named anything else, if the doll had been styled differently, it could have been a decent movie. The idea of a toy going haywire and killing a bunch of people is always going to be a hit. You really can't screw it up. But having said that, I think that Child's Play, the reboot, was more in line or more inspired by movies like Evolver or Chopping Mall, other cult hits from the late 80s, early 90s that involved killer robots and killer toys. I saw it as actually pretty disrespectful for the team behind the Child's Play reboot to go ahead with remaking that property when Don Mancini and the rest of the creative team were very much actively working on something new. It's one thing to reboot a franchise like Friday the 13th that's stalled for 10 years or more or less. It's another thing entirely to reboot a franchise that is still actively building its lore and fans are waiting to have a continuation from the latest sequel, which didn't even happen that long ago. So I avoided seeing the Child's Play reboot until it was free or included with my Hulu subscription. I was really holding out for season 1 of the TV show, and I was not disappointed. So many great things to say about the Child's Play show, season 1. It had practical effects, it had likable new characters. It was essentially a gorier version of Stranger Things with Chucky at the center. There's really nothing that could go wrong, right? I know a lot of people commented on the quote-unquote woke storyline, but as a gay man, I was excited to see this sort of coming-of-age story woven into the fabric of this overall plotline. Because it wasn't just a token character or two or a token relationship. It actually contributed to the plot. It helped move things forward. And I can't imagine having something like that on a TV show that I loved and connected with when I was the age of those characters. So kudos for that. And I really love how season 1 of the TV show attempted to explain things, attempted to weave together some maybe plot holes that we had noticed in the past that had been brought to light. It brought all of the characters we loved together. It had so much going for it. And honestly, since Don Mancini had teamed up with the creative team behind Channel Zero as well, I just knew I was going to love it, and I did. Sure, there was humor here. There was drama. Don Mancini drew from his own upbringing and his life experiences to tell the story of Jake and Devin, and it worked. Now, season 2 took a bit of a turn. I will say that I was super invested in the characters. I never thought that I would be cheering for Lexi, but I think the fact that a show can take a character like Lexi from season 1, who is the worst bully imaginable, who makes fun of another kid's dead dad, could redeem herself, that's pretty impressive. And again, these were all subplots that really worked. They added layers to the characters, to their lives, to their situations. Even the other main characters, like Jake, are flawed. They're tempted by Chucky. They are fighting this urge to succumb to the darkness. But by season 2, we pretty much know who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. Again, kind of pun intended. And this is where, again, when Don Mancini has a hit and he's given a follow-up opportunity, things just go haywire. Season 2 really brought in that seed of Chucky mythology. And I was optimistic at first. You know, season 1 really paid homage to Child's Play 2, and season 3, with the setting of the strict Catholic school, paid more homage to A Child's Play 3, but then halfway through, Seed of Chucky came through. There was really no rhyme or reason, again, to some of the logic, to the rules of possession. Glenn and Glenda, I will say, was portrayed well, but I don't need Glenn or Glenda to have a good Chucky movie. I stuck it out to the end. Season 2 was not quite the appointment viewing that season 1 was for me, especially toward the end. I do kind of love that when they did have to embrace the meta side of things, people like Sutton Strack popped up. I also enjoy The Real Housewives. Go figure. And that was kind of fun. But again, Don Mancini just indulges himself a little bit too much with these moments and with some of these extended episodes. I honestly feel that season 2 could have ended at the penultimate episode, the next to last, and I probably would not have felt so frustrated toward the end. But that final episode just left me not really wanting more. And again, that's a feeling that some of us Chucky fans are used to, that we get excited, we get sucked into even the new characters, which is rare. You don't always feel for the brand new characters who are introduced, but we're sucked in, and then we're kind of just left going, really? And I have to say that I've come to a point where I feel sort of about the Chucky franchise how I feel about the Halloween franchise at this point. They were 2 of my favorites. They are 2 of my favorites because a new sequel is not going to dampen the legacy. I'm sure that's how people looking back felt about Friday the 13th 5, which honestly I've always loved. It's a great Friday the 13th movie, even if Jason technically isn't in it. But I felt a lot about Halloween 2018, how I felt about season 1 of Chucky. I'm thinking, okay, let's give this a chance. Let's see where it goes. With Chucky, at least they are making an effort to build the story, to keep it moving forward, to get that momentum going, instead of going the easy route and retconning or rebooting. However, by the time I got to, let's say, Halloween Ends or Chucky Season 2, I realize I'm just kind of tired as a fan. You know, I'm not left with that feeling of anticipation of, oh man, I have to wait 5 years to find out what happens next. I'm realizing that I don't know that I'm interested in what happens next, you know? And as a fan, that's kind of a disappointing feeling. But hey, we always have the old sequels to look back on. We can always revisit. And who knows, maybe the next slasher icon is in development just around the corner, lurking.